got a guest here at our fairy tale theater. Oh, come inside, quickly, quickly! Sugar cookies and hot cocoa are half off with every ticket purchase. Oh, on second thought, come in for free. It's Christmas after all.
Clairy! Are you letting in someone for free? Why do I smell gingerbread and pie and... God damn it. It's Christmas again, isn't it?
Yeah, I was looking for new media to review out in the human world, and I found out it's Christmas time again!
Yay! The age-old human tradition of endless greed, the era of freezing temperatures, and the only time of the year where it's acceptable for a stranger to break into your house. Like a savage.
Breaking and entering is automatically forgiven if the perpetrator gives you free stuff. We're gonna sing carols, wrap presents,
I swear, it's always like this. Every December, it's just Candy Floss going crazy over another vapid human holiday, and me taking part in her Yuletide torment. I've got to snap her out of this gift-glorifying terrorism! Maybe it's time to do a little Christmas shopping for myself. I've got it! Dozens of episodes of sheer stupidity and boredom in a box! It'll drain her of all Christmas cheer, and we can go back to having a regular, miserable winter! Oh, Clairy! I got you a present from the human world! Why don't you open it?
But it's not Christmas yet.
Just open it!
The secret world of Santa Claus? Wow! This must be how Santa Claus really operates from the human world. Makes me wish he'd come by here once in a while. Hey, Seerius, you want to watch with me?
You know, I was going to say no, because I value my sanity. But I can't help but be merciful. It is Christmas after all, I guess.
Christmas movies aren't even a dime a dozen anymore. They are a cavalcade for a used coupon.
It's also the time of year where all of your money goes down the furnace in order to fuel the ever-dying facade of a loving family. Yay!
But I get it. It's a sweet, wholesome time of year. So sweet movies tend to come out. Even my own favorite movie of all time is technically a Christmas movie. But while holiday movies are a staple of many people's Christmases, holiday-themed TV shows are less likely to appear under your tree. And I get it. It'd be weird to watch a holiday movie out of season, so why watch an entire series of Christmas-themed episodes at any other time but December? It seems like a financial waste to make a show only watchable 1 month out of the year. But there was one show I remember from my childhood, Le Monde Secret du Père Noël, known in English as The Secret World of Santa Claus.
I can almost smell the French insensitivity from my little chateau on the mountainside. Which is a shame, because I don't have a little chateau!
Teletoon would air this show every day for the entirety of December, and I remember looking forward to its circulation every year. However, I stopped watching Teletoon and it faded from my memory. Eventually, I started to believe I had just made up this crazy Christmas cartoon in my head. But no, thanks to the magical power of the internet, I found out it's real. But that's all I really found out. This strange series has little to no information online. But what I did learn is that it was a French-Canadian cartoon that was created back in 1997. It was planned to run syndicated in several different countries, but to my knowledge only made it to France, Canada, and Germany. It was produced by French television production Marathon Media, which produced a lot of cartoons from the late 90s and early 2000s for both French and English audiences. And the show was created by Olivier Bremond and Pascal Berton, the founders of Marathon, with co-creator Annabelle Perrichon. But the animation itself was done by Ciné Group, a Quebec-based animation studio who hasn't made anything since 2005. And with such amazing sounding shows under their belt like Mega Babies and The Magical Adventures of Quasimodo, I'm going to assume they were just too good to live. So time to dig it up out of the blizzard and see if this forgotten animated series is naughty or nice.
Now, I'm going to grab myself some nog. Claire, just do the intro while I get drunk.
Get yourself a cup of cocoa, and relax. This is Le Monde Secret du Père Noël, The Secret World of Santa Claus. The Secret World of Santa Claus is, of course, about the Easter Bunny, aka Jesus' persona. The show centers around Santa Claus and his Christmas duties, such as delivering gifts or training his free elves, Thorin, Geordie, and Gylfie. But they also have to deal with trouble caused by their nasty neighbors, Grizzlebeard and Dudley, both of whom hate Santa and his operations, and are constantly seeking ways to destroy his line of work. And of course, being a cartoon, they fail in hilarious ways! Typical generic cartoon premise wrapped up like a present. Good guys want to do good things, bad guys want to do bad things, interests collide, hijinks ensue, and adventure awaits. Sometimes the show will follow a formula of Santa and his elves meeting a kid, going on a magical adventure with them, and then the episode will end with seeing what the kid got for Christmas. Other times it'll just be Santa and his elves doing some important activity at the North Pole, or doing a separate adventure. The show isn't obnoxious but earnest with how it presents its sweet, small stories. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have major problems within its stories and characters. Let's unwrap them, shall we?
Can't we burn them? This is 1 December. I'd just like to work in peace. Is that too much to ask?
Can't have a show about Santa Claus without Santa. Voiced by Tony Robinow, he displays your typical traits expected for Santa Claus. Compassionate, clever, and willing to put himself at risk to save a child's life. I do like that they try to make him a physically active protagonist, rather than relying on his elves to do his work. He's shown to take personal responsibility for every child's happiness. And to him, one failed mission is a lifetime of shame and regret. It makes for a likable protagonist. You know, when he's not being a big ol' liar snowsuit on fire.
But it's not Christmas yet.
Yes, I know, and normally, I never visit children's homes before then. Good morning, boys. May I come in for just a minute?
A pleasant day to you, sir. We're here to see Alex.
I think we need to go there to really find out what's going on. We've 2 presents to drop off, but this door is...
Here, let me. Lockpicking's my specialty.
Gylfie, that would be breaking in. We're not criminals. Hackers, huh? You'll have to check at their house if you want to be sure.
Grizzlebeard's chimney hasn't been swept in years.
Did you know that Santa is also a Pokemon? As you can see here, he is shown to use various moves on the drunken midgets. He has moves like Hypnosis, Dream Eater, Baldy Press, Insomnia, other moves, none of which are effective at all into making me like Christmas. He's got thick fat for an ability. That's useful, right? As you probably expected, he's the only character here that probably isn't taking 2 sentences to summarize, which is a problem in a show that has a recurring cast. He has his own little sob story where he's not the only Santa, as the name and title keep being inherited a la Tim Allen style. Don't ask me how I know who that is. And I'm all eggnog already. Ugh, Claire! I'm going to refuel. Take over for a bit. And be funny!
Yeah, this is one of those shows that forgets the characters have certain abilities except for in very specific scenarios. Still, Santa is an enjoyable lead, albeit a simple one. We see how hard he works to achieve his goals. Santa is the only character on the show who has motivation. And seeing him go to all these lengths to make sure every child is happy makes him the only character in the show that is remotely interesting. They also tried to give Santa a backstory, but it's too vague. In the second episode, The 12 Labors of Santa Claus, it is revealed that he's been Santa for at least 100 years.
It's a message saying we're about to be visited by 3 judges from the Santa Claus Society.
Santa Claus Society?
The Santa Claus Society is a special organization to check how well I do my job and decide if I'm to be replaced.
Be replaced? But why?
Every 100 years, I have to pass a test that's made up of 12 tough tests.
But in the Christmas conference, he states they have successfully ended the 451st annual Christmas conference.
I declare the 451st Christmas conference officially open.
Implying he's almost 500 years old, or that they were other Santas before him. If so, how did they lose the job? How did Santa get his job? Who was Santa before being, well, Santa if he wasn't there first? Santa has also given presents to dozens of historical figures.
Well, I've had so many. Let me see. I could tell you about the Christmas I gave Leonardo da Vinci some paintbrushes. He wasn't much good when he started, but later on he really got the hang of it. Or the young Mozart.
But most episodes about his past have him already being Santa. And I know that this is a kid's cartoon, but they bring up all of these questions, yet they're never answered. But I like that this Santa isn't afraid to get stern, or even threatening. He's not all cookies and candy canes. And hey, I appreciate a man who can walk right up to a jackal. But what about Santa's elves? Well, instead of a whole workshop full of elves, because background characters are too hard and expensive to animate, we only got 3 this time around. Geordie is the oldest elf, voiced by Flor Bishoprik, a Canadian voice actor who's also written for a few Canadian shows as well. He's a skilled mechanic, the best at magic, and really boring. He's one of those genius characters you see in a dozen other cartoons. The only difference is that he can also shapeshift into animals. It's a shame he can't shapeshift into actual joy. The only other trait I got from Geordie is that he's always willing to help people, but he usually jumps in without thinking, leading to various conflicts like in episode 19, where he spontaneously gives a potion to a kid, causing her to become a giant that wrecks the city. Other than that, he's just your generic smart guy. The characters are in trouble? Never fear! Geordie will simply pull out a science out of his holly jolly hole and voila! Contrived conflicts require contrived solutions, I suppose.
I'm back with more nog, and I'm wasted. Next up is Smithette. She's the only woman in the universe. The only one. She is the strong, independent atheist who don't need no cribbers.
Stuff it down your stocking. Thorin is the only female elf, voiced by Anik Matern. You may recognize her as the founder of the Montreal-based amateur Dynamic Theatre Factory, or you may recognize her other voice roles. Most famously, she was one of the many English voices of Musa in Winx Club, specifically the Cinelume dub for seasons 3 and 4. Luckily, she's the only elf I tolerate. Thorin is the most mature elf out of the midget trio, often the first one to jump into a new task. She takes up a kind personality, a bit like the team's big sister. Her main powers are flying, turning invisible for short periods of time, and she's able to translate any known language on the planet, including animals. Even though with shapeshifter Geordie around, I'd assume that'd be more his department. Due to these powers and her overall intelligent personality, she's the most overpowered elf, and conflicts involving her tend to be weak. Because of her and Geordie's powers, conflicts tend to be solved in dinky manners that leave little room for suspense.
I'm honestly surprised Smithette isn't the nerd of the group. You'd think she would be the jack of all trades on this show, but nah. Let Brainy Smurf handle all of that hubbub. He took a job! Just like that. I'm sober enough to get back into review mode. Well, that's not fun.
But if no powers are what you're looking for, then you got the youngest elf, Gylfie, voiced by Teddy Lee Dillon. Gylfie is an apprentice elf. In the world of the show, elves must study their way up to having powers, eventually becoming one of Santa's elves, considered the best of the best. Which I guess is the in-universe explanation on why there's only 3 of them. But this means Gylfie graduated from elf school and became one of Santa's elves without magic. That's either really impressive on Gylfie's end or really lazy on the writer's end. But since he hasn't graduated to Master Elf like Thorin or Geordie, Gylfie is usually left at the workshop. So we don't really get to know him aside from being grumpy, cowardly, and clumsy. He feels more like a background character. I forget he's there half the time. So those are our main heroes. 1 good character, a tolerable one, and 2 cardboard cutouts, wishing upon a star to become real boys. Any others to mention?
Hey!
You wanna play with me, Thorin? Do you, huh?
Can't you see I'm busy?
Let me handle Balbo. Now, as your resident furry, scaly, Balbo Higgins is a polar bear whose sole existence is to be Santa's pet jester. He's the comic relief who acts as dumb, droning, and so tickly incompetent as he looks, all accompanied with jokes that can and would only be appreciated by fetuses. Yes, fetuses! Fools who weren't foolish enough to join us on this rock of torment. They laugh at Balbo's slapstick more than the rest of us. Such innocent souls who don't deserve to put up with Balbo. Unlike me. Nobody likes him!
Balbo, voiced by A.J. Henderson, I think is meant to be Santa's assistant? I actually don't know why he's here. Oh, I know why! To make the kiddies laugh. His stupidity and sheer uselessness show he's just there for lame comedy. Balbo always goes off into random side quests that contribute to nothing. But episodes with him in the lead are the worst. Easily some of the most cliched plotlines of the show, including everyone being angry with the klutzy one so he runs away because he feels unloved. Which is true! But maybe our villains will spice things up. Grizzlebeard is our main antagonist. And his goal is to ruin Christmas, because that's all Christmas-themed villains are good for. Even though he celebrates Christmas because we see him with presents and a tree. Consistency? That's only reserved for the good guys. Grizzlebeard is voiced by Mark Camacho, a Canadian voice actor who's done work for several television shows and video games. And he's even done voice directing. Most infamously doing the voice direction for the game Watch Dogs. What an honor. He's your generic cartoon bad guy who simply exists to piss in the protagonist's breakfast. But in the original French dub, this character was meant to be Père Foutard, whose name in English loosely translates to the Whipping Father. The Whipping Father got his name by attacking naughty children with a whip, while the good children got presents from Père Noël. He's very similar to other legendary punishers of the naughty ones, such as Germany's Krampus and Iceland's Gryla, only a little less evil. But Père Foutard is only really known in France, Belgium, and Switzerland. So either the English version got really lazy with this character, or the French version made Père Foutard completely unlike his original myth. The only connection to Père Foutard is that Grizzlebeard uses a whip. Once. Instead of calling him Père Foutard, the English dub claims that Grizzlebeard is a troll, or an ogre. They keep changing their minds on whatever this character is. Still, that might be the laziest troll design I've ever seen. He's just a guy with a blue beard, bad teeth, and a leather jacket. That's not evil. That's just a British dude. Come on. Bigger ears, claws, a tail, anything. He's more a Halloween villain than a Christmas villain. He even uses bats and pumpkins. It sucks because the show presents ideas for Christmas-themed villainous motives. Like in episode 25, The Longest Night, where Grizzlebeard suggests to Santa that since Santa delivers all of the good kids' presents, he should deliver the bad children presents.
Hi! I was wondering if you'd let me see the list.
What list?
The list of kids who were rotten. You're in charge of giving out junk to well-behaved brats. Why can't I be in charge of the others? They need somebody to look down on.
I'm sorry, Grizzlebeard. No child is ever bad enough to deserve a visit from you.
But this concept is never used once. This character's level of threat is inconsistent. Sometimes he's this insane supervillain who's a major threat. Other times he's a pathetic loser and the elves scold him like a little kid being punished. But then there's episode 18, The Return of Santa Claus. My favorite episode. This is where Grizzlebeard becomes a totalitarian dictator in a post-apocalyptic future. Oh, you think I'm kidding? After Grizzlebeard tampers with their teleporter and traps them in a time vortex, Santa and the elves are sent to a future where Grizzlebeard has taken over the local village, and has convinced the world that Santa doesn't and never existed. Yet it's never explained where Grizzlebeard, who's established as a buffoon, suddenly got all this advanced weaponry, robots, and how he managed to take over the entire North Pole. And yet the most unrealistic thing about this futuristic setting is that there's a boy named Herbert.
Herbert, perhaps you could explain a few things for us. How is it no one remembers anything about Santa Claus but you?
What child is named Herbert? Is this like the 100-year rule when it comes to baby names? Like how Emily used to be seen as an ugly old lady name and now it's more of a teenager thing 100 years after Emily first became popular? Is Herbert a trendy name in the future? Anyway, it's shown that these robots are morons and are easily defeated by just water. So why hasn't anyone started a rebellion? This might actually be the most thwartable dictatorship and most easily winnable apocalypse scenario in fiction. Before you complain that this is a kids show, Sonic SatAM came out 5 years earlier for the same demographic, and did a child-friendly apocalypse story better with an actually intimidating villain, an actual origin for the end of the world, and some actual effort in the writing. Why does Grizzlebeard even want to take over the world? I thought he just wanted Christmas gone. It's established he has dreams of being a rock star, but he never pursues this and it doesn't really impact him. Aside from a running joke that he sucks at playing the guitar like an unfunny Caconifix, a much better French cartoon character. And despite all this, he's still willing to do stuff like help a random kid with no benefit for himself.
That was a close one.
Please help me!
Huh? What are you doing down there?
I can't hold on much longer!
All right, I'll help, but you gotta promise not to tell anyone.
Until he doesn't anymore.
Whoa! Let go of the rope, you pair of pea-brains!
Anyway, just a reminder, this was the guy who conquered the world. Well, you humans are easily defeated by men with bad facial hair.
Maybe I'll grow a beard and conquer Earth next. Wait, if I'm a dragon, how do I have a faux head of hair? Oh, who cares? Let me introduce you next to Dudley. Dudley's personality is that he's... Well, you know how Clary just mentioned Sonic SatAM? He's snivelly. No, that's it. He's the little cretin who goes along with Grizzlebeard's shenanigans, no matter how reckless, careless, or brain-dead. He has zero depth to him as a person, because in baby cartoons, villains are fifth class.
Dudley is voiced by Michael Rooter, a once award-winning Canadian actor who retired due to being shot 4 times during the Mumbai attack of 2008. He now works as a teacher of meditation, and is considering making a movie about his experiences. Good for him for remaining strong, and props to him for being one of the better actors in the show. But his character sucks! Dudley is meant to be one of those sniveling sidekicks you see in a bunch of cartoons. How do I put this? If you grew up on boys' cartoons, it's Bebop and Rocksteady. If you grew up on girls' cartoons, it's Shrieky and Beastly. Or if you're me, you have Seerius.
How dare you! Say that again, and I will burn this entire theater to the ground! I don't care if it's Grimace! I am not fucking snivelly!
Dudley can be just as nasty as Grizzlebeard, but he has no problem going to Santa for help when Grizzlebeard's shenanigans go too far. They tried to give the cliché begrudging cowardly henchman some more layers, but it's really shallow. And it begs the question, why is Dudley working for Grizzlebeard? He's shown to be able to leave at any time with no punishment. He hates Grizzlebeard, and Santa Claus doesn't even seem to dislike Dudley all that much and is more than willing to help him. There's no reason given to why he stays, he just does. Why doesn't he go work for Santa? Unlike Grizzlebeard, Dudley doesn't seem to hate Christmas all that much. Oh wait! In episode 13, The Boy Who Wished to Be Little Again, he outright quits! But he doesn't go to Santa's. He just steals a growth machine. Dudley does this for seemingly no reason, aside from a vague, I want to be big so no one can pick on me motive. And that's the problem. This character has no motivation for anything he does, making him more of a plot device used for slapstick and pointless bickering dialogue. Why don't we get to the dialogue and the stories?
So, as you've come to understand, the ideas and world building in this Christmas tinkle are about as thought out as a game of Naked Twister. There are very clear ideas and lore on how this show and its idea of Christmas is handled. But each and every one of them were written by reindeer. You have different locales and such, like space, caves, an island filled with Looney Tunes. Yeah, I'm getting distracted by these nothing burgers. Can we just get some conflict sauce? Actually, no. I'm not going to bother. It's terrible. Any potential conflict in the show happens at a breakneck pace. It comes and it goes, like Santa during his panty raids. There's magic in this show, because of course, but there's no rules to the magic. It simply exists to just drag the story out further than it should. And 1 minute of this dreck is 1 minute too much to put up with.
The show really is about showing you, well, Santa's secret world. From answering questions about Santa to showing off a different aspect of the world that's important to his duties. But let's talk conflict. Can't tell a story without one. Conflicts will appear without any real build-up, making them feel really forced into a story. The conflicts are solved far too quickly to leave tension. There's an episode where they travel in space to stop a meteor shower, and they somehow manage to blaze past it in a matter of moments.
Home base to Space Slate. Meteorite at 6 o'clock.
Oh, that was a close call.
We're okay. You did it.
But I do like that the characters don't always rely on magic to solve problems. Magic is often used as a deus ex machina, but the better moments of the show come from the characters relying on wits and working together. But more often than not, characters will be presented with a problem, and characters will pipe up saying that they have the perfect solution. Or characters just remembering and forgetting at obnoxious times. Like in episode 7, where the characters have to invent a machine to help them fly through the fog. Completely forgetting that Rudolph exists for that very purpose. But to be fair, for an episodic show meant for little kids, the world building is at least intriguing. It's established in this world that Santa Claus is not a person, but a title that can be passed down to another. That's an interesting idea, but Arthur Christmas did this concept way better. I do like the fact that Santa has to prove himself worthy of being Santa, especially seen in episodes like the 12 Labors of Santa Claus.
Another example of stupidity is in episode 15. This debacle showcases Sad Panties and his entourage of bureaucracy. The court of Crimbo features very familiar and iconic characters like Saint Lucia and La Befana, and even a mix of new faces like that guy and this dingus. Fun. I don't know what I expected, but no. It's nice to see that some effort is existent when trying to create actual threats and villains. But whenever they do show up and get screen time, they end up being more one-note and insultingly more childishly written than a ho-ho whore. Actually, speaking of child, there's another character in the show named Jesse. He impersonates Santa and steals all of the gifts from the turd factories and ends up getting the real fatty man arrested. Now, remember how I said Santa was a Pokemon? He foolishly chose to replace hypnosis with amnesia. The shenanigans in this, and a ton of other episodes, are filler schlock that exist to keep Tiny Timothy shut up until someone decides to fix his leg. Which is never. Oh, and look, Jesse is forgiven of all his war crimes, despite nearly butchering a national holiday. You know, if I was Santa, I would have had Jesse tarred and feathered!
This world is a mix of real mythological figures and original characters. Sounds cool, but it falls flat. As we've established, Grizzlebeard has no connections at all to Père Fouettard. And this character here was originally the Russian Den Moroz, before getting changed in the English dub to be a generic Jack Frost wannabe. Mixing new and old legends adds a lot of creative possibilities, but these original characters are unmemorable, and the mythological ones barely have any connection to their lore. The show can get confusing on whether or not the world considers Santa real or a myth. In some episodes, everyone knows Santa is real. Other times, he's a mythical figure you grow out of. And then there's episode 11, Santa Claus's Memoirs, where Santa is giving an interview with a human reporter that will be published in a public paper, and he's totally fine with this, but he can't take a photo because he has to be secret. After he gave an interview, making it seem that this reporter is outright insane. Also, this episode highlights Santa's confusing history. Considering his elves are there within the flashbacks interacting with the characters from the past, that implies they were there when these events took place. But they're also surprised with the story? Are the elves in the flashbacks the modern-day elves reacting to Santa's story, interacting with the story, or were they really there? There's also a lack of continuity between episodes. In episode 18, Dudley gets a robot for Christmas. But in episode 20, only an episode apart from each other. It's established he gets a hypnotizing flute for Christmas instead. Normally, this isn't a problem in episodic shows, but when this show relies so heavily on world building, it's so much more noticeable. The main problem with these plot lines is that there's creative ideas that are mashed down to baby food to be spoon-fed to the audience. Animation is mediocre. Not ugly, but definitely amateurish. Animation is recycled constantly within the same episodes. In episode 3, they reused this animation of a man painting and falling off a billboard 3 times. In episode 12, Gruzzlebeard gets kicked multiple times reusing the same animation. And the background art is hilariously cheap. They look like they're made out of markers. Which is funny because there's the occasional painterly background that looks like it belongs in a way better cartoon.
Alright, losers, the time has come for our not-so-favorite countdown. The top whatever mistakes we encountered when reviewing something.
Didn't we already do this in the KO the Kangaroo episode?
Absolutely nobody asked you. Now get back in the kitchen.
Alright, but I'm eating all the food.
Did the people who animated the Christmas tree work on this? Actually, no. These backgrounds make that movie look posh and artsy by a landslide. But there are the rarer instances where the animators have standards and decide to make semi-decent work. Like, take this example where the characters are playing kickball. On ice! Not even an actual ice-related sport like hockey. Kickball! Kickball! Because that must be the only sport that exists in France. Oh, and look at these locales, yeah? I mentioned before that they looked like... they looked. But the main ones especially are unfortunate, because they're the most recurring. Santa's Fancy Schmancy Workshop is a dimmer dome with a slide and pollution. Gruzzlebeard Hut is a man cave. No, that's it. What? Did you think we'd get any other cool recurring locations? I'm sorry to tell you this, but your expectations are just not low enough for the show. Now go to jail.
The music is really nice. Lots of Christmas bells and percussion instruments that suit the mood of each scene. From the goofy stuff to the more whimsical moments. And I do like how all of Gruzzlebeard's instrumental themes are heavy rock covers of Christmas carols. That's a good detail. Speaking of rock, I like the little rock jingle they have to transition to Christmas morning.
Christmas night, oh what a fairy tale. Little twinkle with a glow. Little jingles in the snow. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Love and joy from Santa, ho ho.
Shouts to Olivier Assoudre and Jean-Louis Bompard for the music. The theme song is also pretty good.
Santa Claus, I wrote a letter very long with a Merry Christmas song for my friends to sing along. And I know that very soon, all around the winter, Christmas stars will shine anew.
The voice is very throaty yet soothing, the lyrics flow nicely, and the instruments suit a very calm, Christmassy mood. The voice acting itself is good too. Consistent character voices, convincing enough vocal emotion from the adults. The child acting in this show sucks. Their screams, cries, joy, they all sound wooden. Like the kids had no acting lessons prior to recording. In fact, that's a big problem with the writing. Characters will see magical things before their very eyes, and they'll just not react to it in a realistic way. And yeah, it's a cartoon, it's not supposed to be realistic. But here's an example. In episode 12, a girl named Morgan with a magic wand turns her bullies into mice. And how do they react to a magic wand appearing before them?
Abracadabra! Vivian is now a mouse! You too, Clara! You better change us back, or else you're in trouble.
No reaction. Just going on treating Morgan like she just, I don't know, called them fat or something. And no one notices the magic wand except for one teacher who again reacts to a magic wand like it's nothing. There's suspension of disbelief, and then there's just having mundane reactions to supernatural events with a total lack of believability. Episode 12 actually highlights a lot of the show's poor writing. Morgan turned her city into animals and even had her story published on the news. And she is in no danger whatsoever in her town. She's not threatened or apprehended. The adults don't even react to Santa being there right in front of them. In the next episode, The Boy Who Wished to Be Little Again, Dudley becomes a giant going around stealing food to survive. But the people are complaining about it less like a giant monster came in and more like their pet ate their leftovers.
Scary-looking giant with big pointy ears. He stuck his big fat arm in the window and stole my meatloaf. So he took a turkey from me. I can top both of you. He took my entire fridge, and I just finished cleaning it. I'll bet he kidnapped David. He's been missing for hours.
This is not presentable. Cartoons at this time were vastly different from the ones from decades prior. The show itself feels behind the times, relying mostly on age-old episode cliches, character archetypes, and animation styles. This show was released in the same year as shows like South Park, Daria, Johnny Bravo, King of the Hill, Spawn, Sam and Max Freelance Police, Angry Beavers, The New Batman Adventures, and even Donkey Kong Country. Regardless of whether you like these shows or not, these most likely wouldn't be able to be made and aired in any other time period but the late 90s. In comparison, The Secret World of Santa Claus, due to how it presents itself both in art and writing style, does not feel like a show from 1997. This feels more like a show from the 80s or even late 70s. What makes this show even more outdated? The themes.
Because this is a show for dumb, stupid babies, The Secret World of Terrorism attempts to teach the gremlins actual lessons for them to learn before they get spoiled on Christmas. Whatever little humans do show up in this show, they are just barely substantial enough to fill the gaps of a plot that really shouldn't exist. You end up getting characters in the show with their own motivations, like the Blunder Twins, Chris Thorndike, Snively, who they end up making a robot clone for him out of pity. As for the one-note children, they are generously given enough one-note foils to remind them of how finite their lives are, and it ends up making the enemies into actual man-children, because their solutions to the simplest things are enough to make you scratch your head so hard you end up feeling your own brain tissue. Take the third episode, featuring the twins, Mickey and Rooney. Wait, are those their names? Actually, who cares? They hacked into Santa's bat computer because they're pieces of shit. So they end up following them back to the North Pole and get right into Gruzzlebeard's dungeon, where they're forced to clean. And right before they nearly get whipped into shape, the guy who was clearly designed to scare them straight is shamed for doing his job.
Red alert, Thorin. I think we're going to have to teach these rascals a lesson.
What are we going to do, Santa?
I'll start off with snow and artificial fog, calling all elves. Here's what we're going to do.
No way. Ah! Igor Patered! It couldn't be anything else. Well, what are we waiting for? Yes!
Wow. Truly amazing solutions to the dilemma you created. Screw this. I'm getting more eggnog.
So Santa was pretty much expecting Gruzzlebeard to scare the twins, if not hurt them. And when Gruzzlebeard enslaves them, Santa and his elves get mad at him for doing exactly what they were expecting and hoping he'd do. And these hacker brats who considered holding Thorin for ransom are suddenly changed boys who won't ever do wrong again because they had to clean a living room. Stuff yellow snow down your ho-ho-hole! Aside from that, the kids the show introduces can be pretty sweet. Like a rich boy who just wants to have friends who ends up making conflict when he tries to find a baby bear to rescue after Balbo tells the story on how Santa adopted him. The characters can be generous, but there's a lot of moments where the characters display questionable behaviors or solutions to their problems. Like the presents they deliver seem very cruel. In episode 6, they leave a shrunken horse in a box for several months in a space station. Not a magical horse, mind you, a real, average horse. That they kept in a box with no food or water for several months. In space. And in the previous episode, they leave a reindeer in a box with no air holes for a prolonged period of time, too. Look, animals can make wonderful gifts, but they are not inanimate objects. Don't put them in boxes. And then there's the episodes with really good morals intended, but are terribly executed. In episode 8, Super Rabbit, a boy named Randy has his toy rabbit Jumper thrown out by his big brother Frank, chastising Randy for being attached to baby toys. So Santa and the elves try to bring Jumper back into Randy's life. After all else fails, they decide to make Jumper cool for Frank. So they turn Jumper into a Jazz Jackrabbit / Bucky O'Hare ripoff named Super Rabbit, giving him both action figures and video games, thus making it appeal to Frank instead of Randy. By the way, I love seeing older cartoons, specifically episodes clearly written by older people who didn't grow up with or are familiar with video games, portray video games. It's almost comedic with how basic, bland, and downright archaic video games are presented. Hey Frank! You want to come back to my house and play games like Final Fantasy VII, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, or Tomb Raider 2? Screw those games! I want to play Super Rabbit! This choppy, unimaginative, easy-as-hell 2D platformer! That's the hot game of 1997! Seriously, even with kids' games in 1997, we had Crash Bandicoot 2 and Klonoa Door to Phantomile, which is one of my favorites, by the way. In fact, Klonoa is also a 2D platformer with a bunny-like protagonist. And even then, it had a grand story and challenging levels with beautiful music. Games back then didn't look like Super Rabbit! The episode ends with Frank being a hypocritical little maggot playing with Super Rabbit, that being Jumper dressed in armor and shades, saying that he's making an exception. The episode established that the goal was to make Randy realize it's okay to play with toys. And yeah, it's hinted that Randy knows Super Rabbit is Jumper, but not very clearly. And that's the problem with the episode. The goal is established, yet the episode spirals into making a video game for Frank to convince him stuffed animals are cool, instead of telling Frank to mind his own business and let Randy play with the toys he wants. Well, at least this show can't get any more dated.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for racism!
Oh no!
To really rub it in how French and 90s this show is, it's choked to the brim with cultural and racial stereotyping, because we can't have nice things. In episode 10, they go to Saudi Arabia. I mean, not Saudi Arabia, I mean, Almeria. See, it's not the Middle East, because mostly foreign can walk around with her hair exposed and not get beaten to death. And we've got all your favorite outdated Muslim stereotypes. Our main villain for this episode is a shifty bearded character named Nezar, the no-good, who's portrayed as greedy and suspicious, accompanied by a stereotypical snake charmer theme song.
May I assist you?
I hope you can. We're trying to find Nazar, the nabob's carpet store.
I'm Nazar the No-Good. I'm his great-great-grandson, and this is that store.
Even Jafar would be looking at this guy and saying to himself, "Dear Allah, you're an offensive portrayal of all creepy turban guys everywhere." The only Muslim character in the show who's portrayed as decent is this random shopkeep, who I'm going to call Bro Hamid. He's cool, and I know this was the 90s, and a lot of French media, especially older media, has a stereotype for racial insensitivity. But really, we're doing the creepy old Middle Eastern man stereotype?
Episode 16, The Story of the Trolls, really highlights some of the frankly racist undertones this show has. Wait, the elves are all good and nice! But their relatives, the trolls, are literally all evil and exist for nothing but destruction! And the episode ends with the elves giving the kids a book about how good elves are and how mean trolls are.
Look, Zelka! Hurry, Thorg! Open it and see what's inside of it! Wow, it's as though they're real!
Those are elves, and that's the forest they live in.
They're so lucky! I wonder what's on the next page!
Let's see!
Yuck!
Terrible trolls!
Quick, turn the page!
I like the elves better.
Yeah, I know mindless monsters are a staple of fantasy, but hey, Gruzzlebeard and Dudley are trolls and they don't act like this. Yeah, they're dumb and mean, but the trolls in this episode are mute and destructive without motivation other than just, they're evil! It's more likely just poor writing rather than racial insensitivity, but with how this show portrays some obvious cultural stereotypes, I can't help but feel creeped out when the show makes caricatures of its own made-up races. It's weird considering that all of the cities in this show are made up, including the countries. Yet it just makes it more blatantly obvious that it requires you to recognize stereotypes to identify what place in the real world this is meant to be. The penultimate episodes, The Longest Night and Santa Claus's Secrets. These are technically two-parters, and yes, I find it cute that the final episode is technically episode 25. Like a little advent calendar, only instead of chocolate or Lego pieces, you get a crappy cartoon! Episode 25, The Longest Night, shows us how Santa Claus can deliver presents by freezing time with a magic clock. And in the final episode, Santa Claus's Secrets, it starts immediately where the last one ended. This is the only time continuity is in the show's entire run. Let's start with episode 25, which starts out with the elves assaulting the villain simply because he made a suggestion. A bad suggestion, yeah, but he came without planning to harm them. In fact, he kinda wanted to help in a weird way. And what do? Roast him alive!
I'm sorry, Gruzzlebeard. No child is ever bad enough to deserve a visit from you.
Yeah, is that a compliment or an insult?
You figure it out if you can.
Why'd you do that?
You can't look down on someone when they're standing up.
Climate change is real, because these roasts should have melted the North Pole by now, even though Grizzlebeard makes me wish I weren't alive. I swear, everybody in the show talks over each other like an Italian household. You know, when the lip syncing isn't broken.
Gilfy wants to ride in the sled for the first time and learn Santa Claus's secrets. So Santa talks about this magic time-stopping clock made by the elves of the past, as they drink a super syrup to not be affected by its powers. Oh well, at least there's rules established.
Santa Claus is officially the keeper of time. That's stupidly epic. It's just a shame we didn't know about that earlier. They stopped time in order to deliver presents, but Krampus plans to stop them.
Gilfy is still complaining that he's not allowed to come, even though they said he could?
Thor and Geordie, come on.
Wait, Santa! I want to go too! With you! Can I, huh? Please, can I? I know I'm still just an apprentice, but the more of your secrets I see, the faster I'll learn.
Well, you may come with us, Gilfy.
Yahoo! Can't I come with you?
Not this year, Gilfy.
Aw, but why not? I'm still too young, is that it?
I guess not. Until he's not upset anymore.
Now, Gilfy, if you weren't here, who'd help Balbo look after the workshop while we were gone? I know things are in good hands with you.
Really?
As Santa is doing his runs, Gruzzlebeard and Dudley drug Balbo and capture Gilfy in a pumpkin.
Gilfy, the gene pool clearly failed you. Both with your voice, your name, and, well, everything. You're worthless. Also, is Gruzzlebeard trying to cancel Christmas or terrorize the children because it's the former? Then I believe he's doing a public service. Yes, that's right, I said it. Frick them kids! Gruzzlebeard demands access to the cloakroom, but Gilfy tricks Gruzzlebeard into going through the wrong door. Santa keeps Cthulhu in his workshop as a pet. That's based.
When Gruzzlebeard destroys the clock, time goes backwards until they end up in prehistoric times. They have a literal dinosaur trying to eat them, and it's still boring. Also, if the people from the future are here in the past, then what happened to everyone else? Meh, they're the main characters. Screw the rest. Nothing happens for 10 minutes, and they find the time machine room and Gruzzlebeard because of a reason you don't really care about. They fix the time clock and happy endings. If this was the final episode, but we've still got one more.
Wait. So Gruzzlebeard nearly breaks time, tries to barricade the main characters in the literal pits of time, and he just gets snowballed. The final episode, Santa Claus's Secrets, is where they have an excuse to recycle animation and write nothing but recaps. It's mostly just Santa showing off how he executes his Christmas runs to Gilfy. oh sure, breaking and entering is bad, but literal demonic possession is just fine. It's Christmas! 'Tis the season for Pig Latin! Grizzlebeard's new plan is to play his guitar so terribly that it'll destroy the clock again. We just did this plot! Did this need to be a two-parter if it's just recycling the same story? Grizzlebeard is going to use the same plan he did last time that he knew went terribly. He's going to screw up the clock again, not even an hour after doing it the first time. Oh lord, this dude is literally the definition of insanity.
And we're not joking. This second part is almost exactly the same as the first. Only time goes on as normal rather than going backwards. But if you think this adds an interesting conflict, it doesn't! Barely anything changes aside from a barely impactful deadline. The only time it gets even remotely interesting is when Grizzlebeard threatens to torture a kid and capture Santa and the elves. And if you're thinking, how will they get out of this one? You clearly have too much faith in this show. Santa tells Gilfy that he does have magic within him. And what are his powers? Literally whatever the plot needs.
Gilfy, you can set us free.
Me? Without any magic powers?
But you have one. You just haven't found it yet.
But what is it? And how do I find it?
It's simple. Your power will be whatever you decide. You could find a way of getting the key.
It's too far away. It's impossible.
Nothing's impossible.
You're right. Okay, I'll try and do it.
Don't try, Gilfy. Do it.
Well, here goes.
Concentrate.
It's working! I can feel it! I've got my power now!
Gilfy literally farts out telekinesis because the plot needed him to. They deliver the final presents, and Grizzlebeard and Dudley die in a motorcycle crash. The cartoon doesn't show them making it out okay or anything, so in my heart, I know they've perished. So a happy ending on that front. Gilfy becomes master plot device, elf, and Santa gets his own present, that being a crystal that allows him to see all the presents he gave to the kids throughout the show's run. Which is a really nice ending to a terrible cartoon.
Gaze inside and you'll see all the children you've made happy with your wonderful presents.
Oh, why of all the things I've ever been given, I'll treasure this the most. Geordie, Gilfy, Thorin, I'm lucky to have three such wonderful elves. And, of course, what would the workshop be like without dear old Balbo to liven things up? And Rudolph, Blitzen, and Donner, our trusty reindeer. A Merry Christmas to one and all.
Santa Claus, how do you know a million toys on those little bills?
The secret world of Santa Claus has genuinely creative ideas, focusing on telling imaginative stories and spreading Christmas cheer. But the show itself deteriorates with one-dimensional characters, sloppy animation, and spending so much time lore building only to forget its own rules seconds later, until their world becomes a jumbled mess of half-baked ideas that never reach their full potential. The show is simply boring. Luckily, it's not painful. It never gets too annoying, and it's just trying to do and be its own thing. Like a little boy playing with his toys by himself, making up whatever story pleases him at the moment. That's the best way to sum up how this show presents itself. It knows what it is and doesn't aim to be anything more. The simplicity can be seen as a light charm to the show's favor, but it tries to handle a world that's too big and expansive for itself to handle, leading to a lot of silly moments and cheaply produced assets, resulting in a bland animated series, which is upsetting because there's some good ideas here. But it feels like the creators knew this cartoon wouldn't get a second season due to it being just a Christmas novelty, so weren't given a budget or time. But were given a ton of no-nos by meddling producers who tried to make this as inoffensive as possible. And that's what this is. A cheap Christmas novelty. And yet it's only the second worst Santa Claus cartoon in existence. I can't believe it! Serious, this wasn't the truth about Santa Claus at all! It was just a dumb cartoon!
I am so glad you hated it. I sure did. Do you hate Christmas now? Can we go back to having regular old normal winters like we used to?
Wait a minute. You did something nice for me. That never happens! I know exactly what's going on here. It's the Christmas spirit!
No,
You got me presents! You never got me presents before!
I tricked you into watching a stupid show that would convince you to hate Christmas. How is this that?
Why, Siri, Christmas has touched your heart!
Ugh, I give up.
Alright, now for your present. An all-you-can-drink voucher for a year at the Eggnog Stop. The only eggnog-themed restaurant in town. Mostly because no one else is stupid enough to enact financial suicide like that. Which explains why they can afford to give you nog for a year considering they're barely open.
You know me so well. I do love supporting dying businesses. Especially ones like yours.
What an insulting compliment. Come on, Seerius, let's get wasted. Mama wants to get in the stocking with a ho-ho-ho.
And now you're speaking my language! Merry Pissmas, you baboons!